sleep tonight. I found a way to the old world. My proof of entry's resilience, with receipts to say I stole the show. I would take a moment of your time to rearrange your mind to follow patterns in the sky. Back and forth and twisted, deaf and blind, ignoring all the signs, relocating every line. Black and blue, I'm bruised for you, but smiling too. I can't see through this rush, I'm too exalted to recognize it's true. We're growing old, and if we let this die, and all this time waiting for a reason to survive, why would I sacrifice for a life? If we let this die, and all this time waiting for a reason to survive, why would I sacrifice for a life? We ignite, but the fire's burning cold. Why would I lie when the fire's burning cold? We ignite, but the fire's burning cold.
Okay, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Microjourneys. My name is Liam Sturgess, and as you just heard, I'm a musician. I make noise into microphones, much like this one. And sometimes I talk into them and share ideas and explore new concepts. And that is what we do here on Microjourneys. But I thought it would be a lot of fun today to play a song that I made with a collaborator named VR3Z. We made that back in 2019. I recorded, I was just remembering how bad my first version sounded, recorded with a mobile, a Zoom H4n in a hotel room in Portland, Oregon. Had to apologize to my friend Dustin. You know, those early drafts sometimes take a bit of refining later. But as it turns out, it was one of the coolest songs I ever got to work on, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. It was, in fact, the first progressive house collaboration that I got to do, and that kicked off like 2 years of songs just like that. So very fond place in my heart for Fires Burning Cold, and I'll make sure to put the link to that particular YouTube video where you can listen to it in the description afterwards. Now, what we're going to do here today is what we do every Microjourney, which is we pick a topic of interest, something that's come up oftentimes in the news, something that is on people's radar, sometimes in the realm of pop culture, sometimes, well, things facing humanity. And as a lay person, as a musician, I like to try to learn more and more every time about how the world works and identify ways in which I can live my life in a more informed way. And I like to share that process with you. So that is why we are here today. And the thing that got my attention in the last couple of weeks, actually, was this group called Operation Underground Railroad. Now, we're going to get into that, but the title of today's show, it's a long one, Human Trafficking NGO's Close Ties with Questionable Genetics Company. Operation Underground Railroad and Predictive Technology Group. So let's jump into this. I'll give you a bit of background for those who are new. Now, before we do that, though, I have received some feedback, which is sometimes I tend to bury the lead in my investigative pieces. All right, I'm never one to decline constructive criticism, so let's start with the lead. Operation Underground Railroad, the human traffic organization featured in the runaway hit movie The Sound of Freedom, has strong ties with genetic technology company Predictive Technology Group. Allow me to explain. A few weeks ago, I published a microjourney exploring a company called Pure Blood Registry. In summary, and I do recommend you go and either read the Substack article or watch the previous Microjourney if you haven't yet, but it offers its customers access to a curated list of blood donors who declare having not received a COVID-19 mRNA vaccine, therefore rendering their blood pure, quote unquote, for transfusion. Now, while I have numerous concerns, as I expressed in that piece, with the business itself, from the name down to its terms of service and everything in between, what really piqued my interest was Pure Blood Registry's list of partners. You can see them on the screen now. Now, I want to add that between the time of my starting my Microjourney and publishing it and sharing it and doing my video, more partners had been added. So this one here, this screenshot here appeared in the video version of my previous Microjourney, but not the Substack. So there's some more names here. And my ID was the first name that caught my eye, in no small part because of its connection to the story of the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. However relevant that aspect of the story may or may not actually be. But my investigation quickly led me into the strange world of another company called Predictive Technology Group, with whom my ID had collaborated on a COVID-19 antibody test called Assurance AB. Now, over the past few weeks, I have continued to pull on the so-called predictive thread and have been utterly perplexed by what I have found. You could say I didn't predict where this line of inquiry might take me. Oh. Meet Simon Brewer. Simon Brewer is a certified professional accountant based in Salt Lake City, Utah. There's a couple of things I'd like you to know about him. Brewer is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, colloquially known as the Mormon Church. He published this video, I think in July of this year, on a channel of his friend on YouTube, it appears. And I'll just let him very briefly speak to his faith.
Well, hello there. My name's Simon, and I stumbled upon these videos on YouTube and was just so happy to see somebody who has found this gospel and is so excited about the doctrine. And what really touched me is the search, that he's been on a search for so long and has found these truths, and it has moved upon him to not be able to contain himself. I feel a similar type of thing as I think about the gospel. However, living in Utah, having a career in Utah, kind of makes me a little bit more nervous to speak out. So instead, I decided to join him on YouTube, which is just the best way I think I could go with this. I was talking to him about some talks I'd been given in my current stake, and shared with him some thoughts on one of them. And he asked me to prepare a video and share one of these talks I gave. And
now, I highly recommend, if you'd like to, you can go and watch the entire video. I'm sure he is a very inspirational speaker. I have no doubt, in fact. But that's just a quick introduction, letting him use his own words. Now, as part of his faith, Brewer traveled to Russia for a 2-year mission from 1997 to 1999, visiting the cities of, I'm going to butcher this, Yekaterinburg, Ufa, and Chelyabinsk. According to his LinkedIn profile, Brewer planned service activities, taught English classes, and planned large meetings, which helped him develop conversational fluency in Russian. He then studied at the University of Utah from 2000 to 2004, earning a Bachelor of Arts in Accounting with a minor in Russian. He graduated in 2005 with a master's degree in accounting. Now, getting into his career. From 2005 to 2009, Brewer worked as a supervising senior associate at KPMG, which is one of the big three, I think, accounting and auditing firms in the world. His clients included the United States Department of Energy, the United States Department of the Interior, CHG Healthcare, which is one of the world's, or rather the country's, largest healthcare staffing agencies, and United Way, which of course is also a very large, I think, multinational. We have them up here in Canada, nonprofit organization. Charity, you might say. Then, from 2009 to 2013, he worked as corporate controller at Backcountry, an online retailer that sells outdoor gear. Utah is a very nice place to explore. He also worked as an associate instructor at the University of Utah in the accounting department from 2010 to 2013. So far, so good. In 2013, Brewer was recruited by Wilson Electronics as their new vice president of finance and IT. Wilson sells signal boosters for cell phones, like this guy here, which I just found out, by the way. Quick side note, apparently this specific model of iPhone, the iPhone 12, emits more electromagnetic radiation than the French regulatory agencies allow. And they have banned the sale of the iPhone 12 in France. So, yay me. In any case, those signal boosters for cell phones, which allow businesses and consumers to easily enjoy 5G. The company claims to work closely with the Federal Communications Commission, the branch of the United States government responsible for regulating the wireless telecommunications industry. Brewer worked at Wilson Electronics from 2013 to 2016. His next 2 years were spent as chief... Hey, I've jumped right to the end. Now, spoiler alert. All right, let me fix this here. Okay, he spent his next 2 years as chief financial officer at Norbest, one of the top turkey marketing firms in the United States. A rather odd career move, but one where he created a big data group to add databases and informational flows to help in decision making. Then, in 2018, Brewer was recruited to Predictive Technology Group as CFO and head of accounting, finance, and HR, prior to major company growth from cutting-edge DNA products. That was a quote from his LinkedIn profile. And in other words, his arrival came just before the company underwent significant expansion, specifically in the realm of DNA analysis and therapeutics. Now, federal filings and a market research report reveal that he started as chief accounting officer in January 2018 and chief financial officer on July 1st, 2018. His LinkedIn profile puts him at both Predictive Technology Group and Predictive Biotech, one of the many subsidiaries of Predictive Technology Group. There we go. Moreover, Brewer takes credit for completing identification, due diligence, financial viability, accounting, and integration of 6 acquisitions. Now, if Hindenburg Investment Research's article published on Seeking Alpha's website is correct, then this might not be something to be bragging too loudly about. Based on that article and my own research, some of those 6 acquired companies are most likely Tauret Laboratories, Inception DX, Flagship Health Group, Regenerative Medical Technologies, and possibly CellSure. Now, what is CellSure? It's a stem cell donation company founded by none other than Eric Olson, who you may recall from my prior Microjourney, CEO of MyID and Predictive Biotech. On his LinkedIn page, Olson describes CellSure as a company, quote, focused on procuring human tissue, cells, and DNA for clinical studies and product development, end quote. A CellSure fact sheet from April 2021 describes the company as a subsidiary of Predictive Biotech, specifically. Now, not strictly related, but as a quick side note, the lawyer registered as manager on the documentation for CellSure is Jim Pisoli, whose former partner was convicted by a federal judge in December 2022 for, quote, swindling $2.6 million from hospitals seeking coveted protective gear in the traumatic early days of the COVID-19 pandemic and blowing much of it on credit cards and luxury cars. End quote. In May 2019, Brewer went back to work at the University of Utah as an adjunct instructor in accounting. Now, his staff profile has since been wiped from the school's website, but I was able to recover it from Google's cache. Don't mind if I do. And if you're looking on screen, you'll see that his website is listed as predtechgroup.com. So his instructor profile has been wiped, but he does, however, still have a profile on Rate My Professors, where one student complained about how often he would go on tangents and tell, quote, irrelevant stories about Area 51 during his time auditing, end quote. Well, now, I'm no expert on Area 51, but my gut tells me that not just anybody gets to look at those books. As described by military.com, Area 51 is a highly classified United States military installation, which was not officially acknowledged by the CIA as a military base until June 2013. Also, it sits on land, as I found out, with a history of tight control by both the Department of the Interior and Department of Energy. Turns out the land bordered on part of the Nevada testing grounds where I think they did the most nuclear tests. In other words, they had good control over everything in the area. And it's not then a leap, it's not a big leap at all to speculate that Simon Brewer might have been telling the truth about conducting audits there. Because remember, the Departments of the Interior and Department of Energy were two of his listed clients when he was working at KPMG. That does, however, suggest that Brewer would have had to have received sufficient security clearance, since the base's primary occupants, aliens aside, are the Air Force and the Central Intelligence Agency. The aliens thing was a joke. Or is it? I don't know. That's the point. Finally, in July 2021, Brewer was, I quote, recruited to fight against human trafficking worldwide at a non-profit dedicated to the cause, end quote. Specifically, Operation Underground Railroad. So, what is Operation Underground Railroad, you may ask? Oh, great question, viewer. For that answer, let's turn to the movies.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
How long have you been doing this?
12 years now.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
Tintín, por rescatar niños, ¿verdad? ¿Puedes ayudarme a encontrar a mi hermana?
Te lo prometo.
For Homeland Security, you know we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
Which means she'll disappear for good. Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. What we do?
You quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
So at this moment, she could be a block down the road, or she could be at Moscow, Bangkok, LA. She's a major operator.
It's all rebel territory. No one goes in. Not the army, not the police, not us.
What if this was your daughter?
There's no Marine unit coming.
You're on your own. This job tears you to pieces. And this is my one chance. those pieces back together.
When God tells you what to do, you cannot hesitate.
Okay, so I think that's a fairly good self-explanation as to what it is. Now, if I can just get
An estimated
if I can get this to move forward. There we go. Okay, so there you go. Operation Underground Railroad, or OUR, was the subject of this year's runaway hit movie called The Sound of Freedom, which premiered on July 4th. As covered in the BBC, I quote, "Sound of Freedom tells the story of a government agent who busts a child sexual abuse ring operating in Colombia. The main character is based on Timothy Ballard, a former Department of Homeland Security agent who founded an anti-human trafficking organization, Operation Underground Railroad." End quote. Now, according to the filmmakers, the movie is based on the true story of Tim Ballard and his noble quest to save children stuck in the all-too-real child sex trafficking industry. As with any biopic, it is a fictionalized version of real events. Nonetheless, it presents itself as an advertisement, both of the problem and Operation Underground Railroad's valiant efforts to resolve it. And without a doubt, it's a noble cause. Apart from some of the absurd hand-waving dismissals of the film that accuse it of doing no more than promoting QAnon conspiracy theories, I think any reasonable person would agree that a world where this kind of human trafficking operation exists at all is simply untenable. And in the face of government obstruction, such as appears to be depicted in The Sound of Freedom, and apparent collusion, well, the late convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein had some really powerful friends, one can at least theoretically understand why a non-governmental organization such as Operation Underground Railroad would decide to take matters into its own hands. For now, let's take Operation Underground Railroad at face value. As an organization filled with mostly muscly men seeking to raise awareness about child trafficking and apply some vigilante justice to stop the bad guys. Well, as I'm sure you've already surmised, the organization faces a number of credible criticisms that potentially undermine its purported good intentions. But for the sake of staying within scope, for now, I'll leave those for another day. In the meantime, it's safe to say that Simon Brewer was taken by the mission, one which led him to leave his high-level position at Predictive Technology Group in order to join Operation Underground Railroad. Well, this turns out to have been quite the trend in Brewer's circles. Meet Jeff Carter. Jeffrey Lane Carter is an American retail industry specialist based in Draper, Utah. That wasn't me being mean. Look at his Twitter handle and, the big picture. It's an easy mistake to make. His LinkedIn profile suggests, or rather lists, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as his top interest, at least for companies, suggesting that he may too be Mormon. Now, this rather innocuous detail is not the only thing Jeff Carter has in common with Simon Brewer. From November 2001 to January 2019, Carter worked in a series of high-level positions at Backcountry, that aforementioned outdoor gear retailer. Brewer's tenure as corporate controller between 2009 and 2013 took place while Carter was vice president and then senior vice president of fulfillment operations. I was very curious about this Backcountry. What an odd connection. So, notably, as I found out, a controlling stake in Backcountry was acquired in May 2007 by Liberty Media, a mass media corporation owned by billionaire John C. Malone. As described by the Gentleman's Journal, He's described by the Gentleman's Journal as the most powerful man that you've never heard of. Malone's media empire rivals that of the Murdoch family, with sizable stakes in some of the world's most notable news agencies and film studios. Believe it or not, Malone even came close to a hostile takeover of Murdoch's News Corporation. That might have that fundamentally changed the course of discourse in American history. He also happens to be one of the largest, if not the largest, private landowners in the United States of America. Now you might be thinking, Liam, what about Bill Gates? That's farmland. This is all private land. Malone also just so happens to be enthusiastic, well, yes, about horses, but something else as well. Genetic medicine. In December 2014, he and his wife donated $42.5 million to Colorado State University for the creation of the C. Wayne McIlwraith Translational Medicine Institute, born out of the couple's fascination for, quote, the healing power of stem cells and horses. The intent of the donation was to create a facility to, quote, investigate next-generation remedies based on living cells and their products, including patient-derived stem cells, to treat musculoskeletal disease and other ailments, end quote. More specifically, resume quote, gene therapy, stem cells, specialized tissue replacement, and novel proteins. The Institute opened its doors in May 2019. At that point, Malone's portfolio, through his Malone Family Foundation, held a healthy and profitable stake in Pfizer, which, if you didn't know, would go on to roll out an experimental gene therapy product to much of the world's population, starting just 1 year later, in the form of its mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccine. Other companies in Malone's portfolio with an interest in gene therapy, novel proteins, and the like include Gilead Sciences, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, and Novartis. Needless to say, 2020 and 2021 were excellent years on the stock market for Mr. Malone. Now, back to our friend Jeff Carter. After over 17 years of working at Backcountry, Jeff Carter left to take a job as Senior Vice President of Operations at Predictive Biotech in February 2019, reunited with his old coworker Simon Brewer, who was, at this point, working as CFO at Predictive. Then, in September 2021, Carter jumped over to Operation Underground Railroad as its Chief Commerce Officer, only 2 months after Simon Brewer himself had jumped over to the new OUR. So, at this point, there are many plausible explanations as to why these two gentlemen would follow such a similar career trajectory. For one, they may have just been good buddies and effective co-workers, successfully leveraging each other's promotions to get the other guy a gig. Case closed, right? Wrong. Meet Will Auburn, or Oborn, who is a customer service specialist based in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's visibly younger than Simon Brewer and Jeff Carter, suggesting that the three of them are not simply contemporaries. They did all work together, though. After early gigs in restaurant and retail, plus a sweet gig with the company that manufactures compound bows for the Olympics, Hunger Games, and the Avengers, Oborn wound up at, you may have guessed it, Backcountry. He began as a customer service representative in August 2016, working his way up to customer loyalty team lead by the end of his departure in November 2019. Oborn was then, too, recruited to Predictive Biotech, starting as a relationship manager and then customer service supervisor. He stayed in the latter position from July 2020 to July 2021, before ultimately making his leap, as they all do, to Operation Underground Railroad as customer service manager. Who are the customers at an anti-human trafficking organization? Who are the customers? You know, Operation Underground Railroad may be more appropriate as a name than I previously realized. You know, what with all these recruits being ferried down the same track, it's now really hard to see this as a coincidence. So let's meet their friends. What? There's even more people to add to the list? Yes, it's true. There are further examples of people who check off a large number of these same boxes we've been talking about, though not all of them are quite identical. For example, Carlos Bauer. Carlos Bauer is a certified professional accountant based in, Salt Lake City, Utah. His LinkedIn profile even boasts an endorsement from the highly skilled Simon Brewer. Bauer worked his way up through junior accounting and senior associate positions from 2010 to 2017, when he started a 9-month gig as controller at Nielsen RV. He took this job title with him when he was hired at Predictive Technology Group in April 2018, where he remained 2 years till April 2021. 3 years. Math. Like clockwork, Bauer then hopped over to his new gig at Not-for-Profit, VP of Finance and Accounting at Not-for-Profit. Where he worked variably as controller, treasurer, and VP of Finance and Accounting, and he remains there to this day. Well, interestingly, Bauer's LinkedIn profile doesn't explicitly name the not-for-profit organization he works for. However, Operation Underground Railroad's most recent tax filings confirm Bauer's position and the timing of his employment. How about another? Taylor Huckstep. Taylor Huckstep is an information technology specialist based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Huckstep is also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. According to his LinkedIn profile, he volunteered with the church in Yekaterinburg, Russia from 1996 to 1998, overlapping with Simon Brewer's mission in the very same city. In March 2017, Huckstep began working as Senior Director of Information Technology at Norbest, specifically located in Moroni, Utah, as per his LinkedIn profile. Now, Norbest, we've heard this before. Recall that Simon Brewer had previously been CFO at Norbest, and it was that large turkey company, right? And he worked there as CFO from 2016 to 2018. Another area where these two men crossed over. Well, as it turns out, the Moroni farm, where Huckstep claims to have been based, had a animal rights scandal, bordered on a human rights scandal, just a couple of months prior to Huckstep's arrival and during Brewer's tenure as CFO. Ask Glenn Greenwald about this one. I don't know if I'm not saying they had anything to do with that. I'm just saying it was under Simon Brewer's watch. I don't know if that's meaningful. In November 2018, Huckstep began his position as Senior Director of IT at Predictive Technology Group, where he led, quote, all information systems initiatives within the company, reporting to the CFO. The CFO, of course, was Simon Brewer. He stayed there until July 2021, when he went to work for Operation Underground Railroad as VP of IT. Anyone else? Yeah, Tawny Frampton. Tawny Frampton is Operation Underground Railroad's Director of Financial Operations, also based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Her accounting skills got a 1-2 thumbs up from Brewer and Carter. How nice. Frampton attended the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah in 2013 and 2014 while working as an accountant at Backcountry. There's Backcountry again. In January 2015, she went to work as an assurance senior at BDO USA, an accounting firm which just so happens to be a member of the Medical CBRN Defense Consortium. Ever heard of it? CBRN stands for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear, which are often described as weapons of mass destruction. According to the MCDC's website, the Medical CBRN Defense Consortium was formed in response to the United States government's expressed interest to establish an Other Transaction Agreement, or OTA, with an eligible entity or group of entities to include industry, academic, and not-for-profit partners for advanced development efforts to support the Department of Defense's medical, pharmaceutical, and diagnostic requirements as related to enhancing the mission effectiveness of military personnel. So without getting too far into the weeds, other transaction agreements, or under Other Transaction Authority, OTA, have been fingered by some as the mechanism through which the United States government commissioned and procured its various countermeasures against COVID-19, including genetic vaccines and experimental therapeutics. Some have even suggested that this mechanism allowed the government to completely bypass the authority of the Food and Drug Administration, with the so-called approvals being done entirely for show. Truthfully, I don't feel confident enough in my understanding of OTAs to comment more on this train of thought at this point. But I do feel it's important to introduce the term to you nonetheless, as it's come up in this context. As described in an overview document published by ACNotes, other transactions are legally binding instruments that may be used to engage industry and academia for a broad range of research and prototyping activities. OTs are typically defined by what they are not. They are not standard procurement contracts, grants, or cooperative agreements. As such, they are generally not subject to the federal laws and regulations that apply to government procurement contracts. In any case, BDO USA's fellow members in the Medical CBRN Defense Consortium include multiple companies that previously had been created with or led by, in some form, Dr. Robert Malone, including Alchem Laboratories and Inovio Pharmaceuticals, plus COVID-19 vaccine/therapeutic developers and manufacturers, including AstraZeneca, Emergent Biosolutions, Ginkgo Bioworks, Icon, that's where Brooke Jackson worked, Janssen, Medicago, Merck, Novavax, Pfizer, and Ridgeback Biotherapeutics. So after her time with BDO USA in January 2019, ended in January 2019, Frampton went to work for Predictive Technology Group as assistant controller and then controller. She left Predictive in August 2021 for her position at Operation Underground Railroad. So what's the deal? Predictive Technology Group and Operation Underground Railroad are inexplicably tied together in a way that might make me blurry when I go on camera, and I don't quite know why. Well, you may have to deal with blurry Liam. But they're tied together in a way that one might not have expected. I certainly didn't. In this short summary, I've highlighted 6 people who worked at both organizations back to back, without any clear explanation for the pattern. And there's other things in common as well that we didn't dive into as much, but maybe somebody else will. The organizations, they don't work in the same industry, and there's very little, if any, inherent crossover in their activities. In fact, the combination of cutting-edge DNA products and the tracking, processing, and relocation of sex-trafficked children is just plain weird. What am I missing? Well, that'll do it for today, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Microjourneys, and I've been Liam Sturgess. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in to watch live, and there have been a fair few of you. And thank you to everybody, of course, watching after the fact as well on the platforms that play host to us. one of them still being YouTube, believe it or not. But you can also find us on Rumble, find us, the royal us, as well as on Locals and BitChute and Brighteon and Sovereign. And of course, the way I do the show is I put together show notes in the form of an article, which I've started to release in the day or two before the video episode comes out. But you can find everything I've talked about today, all of my citations, of which there are some 60 for this particular episode. Let's see. Yeah, 56 in the description of this video. And if it's not there, it will be in just a couple of minutes, depending on what platform you're looking at. But you can go find that and every other piece that I've worked on, both for Microjourneys and Rounding the Earth and the Kennedy Beacon, at liamsturgess.substack.com. And of course, you can also find me at liamsturgess.com. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it from me for today. Thank you again. I have been Liam Sturgess, and I hope you are staying happy, healthy, well, and generally in the place you want to be. We'll see you again soon.